Here is your behind the hoop guts and all hoop number 3. This is fabric from Rifle Paper Company, and let's start by looking at the hoop guts. I really like when the hoop guts look a lot like the front of the fabric. So on the back of this one, if you look closely, you can see the flowers, you can see the whole design really. Let's look at the front again, and then the back. It looks a lot like the front of the fabric. There's a lot going on. You can see all of the thread that I've used for the sequins. I kind of went all over the place with that. Lots of textures. I used some thicker threads with this one that you can see there. So now let's look closer at the front. This is an encrusted embroidery hoop. It's one that every piece of the fabric has been embroidered and stitched up and is lovely with texture. So for this hoop, I used a lot of tapestry wool and also the DMC matte cotton. And I'll show you what those look like next to each other. So I love using tapestry wool because it is a thicker thread, so it shows up really well. So you can see I used that here. I used it here. Let's see, I used some here. So it's definitely thicker, and that's what you can see here. Now this is also DMC. This is the Cotton Redder's Mat. And side by side, let's see, I'll pull out 2 strands. They're both fairly thick threads. The tapestry wool is slightly thicker. This has a matter appearance, so it doesn't have a ton of shine to it, which I really like in the embroidery. So you can see that here, this brown part, the leaf is stitched with that. The gray leaves are stitched with that. Some of these sections here, this is a tapestry wool right next to the Cotton Redder's Mat. So side by side, you can see that the tapestry wool still has a bit of a shine to it, and this does not have as much of a shine. I love using them side by side. And then this is a pearl cotton. So this is a size 5, which is the medium weight pearl cotton. So all 3 strands, let's see. You can see the difference in the thickness there. The pearl cotton is thinner and has a nice sheen to it. And I used that in these little tiny flowers here, and in the colonial knots here. So I played with the thickness of the threads in this piece. This is also a piece where I added dimension through trapunto, which is like a technique where you stuff a fabric. Now, this one I did not cut a little hole in the back and stuff anything that way. The way that I handled this is I just cut this same shape, the same flower shape, from another section of the fabric, laid it right on top, stitched it down, and then left a little opening where I filled that with stuffing. And so that raised up this flower because I knew I had a lot of dimension going on throughout the hoop, and I didn't want that to be forgotten. I wanted it to be visible. So I added dimension that way. You can see I played with stacks of really large beads. So these are like the size, either 2 or 32 beads from John Bead Company with bugle beads on the inside. I used, these are really cool. They just kind of look like rock chips almost. I'll try and show you from the side. They have, I think I got those, I picked those up at Michael's. I always like to look at the strands of beads at Michael's for just unusual shapes and colors to mix in with the check seed beads that I love to use most of the time. These are glass beads that are shaped kind of like bugle beads, but they're slightly larger. And I used a lot of bugle beads throughout this hoop. You can see them everywhere lots of colors. They're great for playing with the shapes of the leaves that were on the fabric. And then let's talk sequins. So I didn't want the main floral piece to, like, I really liked that I had a white background or like a strip down the side, and I didn't want to take away from that. But I did want something on this because my goal was to stitch every piece of this fabric. So what I did was I used 2 different sizes, and I'm going to try and get nice and close so you can see. You can see right here is the larger size, and then right next to it is a smaller size, clear flat sequin. So when you look at it from a distance, you can see there's shine, you can see there's something there, but it doesn't take away from the main floral motif. And I like to do that a lot on background fabrics, so that, or the background sections of fabric, so that there is some stitching, but it's not distracting. So it doesn't take away from the main piece of the embroidery that you want to focus on. You're just getting into embroidery, this is a really great place to start finding a simple floral motif, and you can go much simpler than this. This has a lot going on. Find a simple floral motif and just start practicing your embroidery stitches on it, and you can create something just like this. There's your up close and personal glimpse into the creative process behind my hoops. I hope you enjoyed this. Happy stitching, and get those needles out. Start stitching.